Okay, so for this problem, it says a ball is thrown from an initial height of 1 with an upward velocity of 25. And it gives us this equation to use right here. So it says find all the values for t where the ball's height is 6. So if the ball's height is 6, we're going to rewrite this equation as 6 is equal to 1 plus 25t minus 5t squared. So then we need to recognize that we're dealing with a quadratic, and we know that because we have that squared as our highest degree. So when we're dealing with quadratics and we want to solve for, oops, this should be a t. When we want to solve for one of the variable, what we do is we set everything equal to 0. So I'm actually going to move each piece of this over to this side so that I can work with it. So to move the negative 5t squared, I'm going to add 5t squared to both sides. To move the 25t, I'm going to subtract 25t from both sides. And then to move the 1, again, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So add 5t squared, it's the only squared term, so I get 5t squared, minus 25t, it's the only term with just a t on it, not t squared, so I end up with minus 25t, and then I'm subtracting 1. Well, if I subtract 1 from 6, since neither of those have a variable, I can do 6 minus 1, and I get positive 5. And I set the whole thing equal to 0. So now I have this quadratic, and I go, okay, well, I need to figure out how do I solve a quadratic. Well, one of the easiest way to do that is using the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is if I have ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, right? Then I can use my negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac and all of that over 2a. So that is how I can find out what x equals. So in this case, I'm going to start by identifying my a, my b, and my c. So a is whatever's being multiplied by x squared. So in this case, a would be 5, because that's what's being multiplied by the squared term. B is whatever's being multiplied by just the x term, or in this case, just the t term, and in this case, that would be negative 25. And then c is whatever my constant is, so c is whatever number doesn't have any kind of x, or in this case, t, and in this case, that's going to be 5. So now I have all of these values. I have my a, my b, my c, so I'm just going to substitute those into this equation. So when I do that, I get negative b, so in this case, negative 25, so negative 25, and then plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 25 squared minus 4 times a, which in this case is 5, times c, which in this case is also 5, and then I put all of that over 2 times a, which is 5. So now I'm going to work on just clearing all of this up and making it look a little bit nicer. So negative times the negative is a positive, so I end up with positive 25 plus or minus the square root, and then negative 25 squared is 625, and then minus 4 times 5 times 5. Well, 5 times 5 is 25, and 25 times 4 is 100, so minus 100, and then all of that over 2 times 5, which is 10. So when I get to this point, 25 plus or minus, so I still need to clean up underneath this radical, which is what we call the square root sign. It's just a radical. So then I do 625 minus 100 under there, and I get 525. So I'm going to take and start working up here. So that gives me 25 plus or minus the square root of 525 all over 10. Well, at this point, I need to find what the square root of 525 is. So I can go ahead and put that into my calculator, and I would do 525 and take the square root of that, and I get 22 and 9/10. Does it want it in hundredths? So then that would be 25 and 91 hundredths. Since there are 2 zeros in 100, that means I'm doing to 2 decimal places for hundredths. So then that would be 25 plus or minus 22 and 91 hundredths. 22 and 91 hundredths all over 10. Well, at this point, I have this plus or minus in here, and I can't do any more simplifying. So now I need to deal with this plus or minus and make it 2 separate equations. So that means that I'm going to do 25 plus 22 and 91 hundredths over 10, or 25 minus 22.91 over 10. And I do the plus or minus because I had plus or minus together right here. Well, I can't add and subtract at the same time, so I need to break it into 2 separate pieces. So then I do 25 plus 22 and 91 hundredths, which gives me 47 and 91 hundredths over 10, or 25 minus 22 and 91 hundredths. So I do, let's see, that would be 2 and 8 hundredths over 10. And then from there, I just divide each of them by 10, and that gives me, I'm going to go ahead and change my color one more time. Oh, I definitely don't want to do gray on there because I wouldn't be seen, so I'll do purple. So divide by 10, that means that that answer is 4 and 79 hundredths, or divide by 10, 0.208, which is 0.21 because I would round up. And then these would be my possible answers for the values of t where the height is exactly 6 meters. So I hope that